Hey, it's Connie again, and this is the promised video where I'm going to talk more about AI. This is the second video I will have done on this topic, and we're just going to talk more about what it could mean in our future. And a lot is hard to predict, but there are some things that we uh, pretty much know with a fair degree of certainty that should help us in shaping the kind of future we want. Um, and before I get started, I just want to remind everybody to check out my previous videos. The last one I did was about smartphones again, particularly Android, and I made another tutorial for people who aren't as adept technologically or probably haven't been as exposed to it or whatever the case might be, or if you're newly blind or older. Um, it might be a good one for you because it goes at a slower pace than a lot of stuff on the web, and I just teach you the basics of um, some tips on getting around the screen with your smartphone. And I also did a video before that about more of my school memories, um, including just that awkward time of life when you're in junior high. And I'll probably backtrack on a future video and talk about more even my younger days before junior high. But I kind of got off on a tangent about some of the policies that the school made that we didn't think were too brilliant as kids. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to different things you may not have agreed with or thought was fair or whatever. But I'm just really want to keep those memories alive of a boarding school like that because I don't think there are going to be many of them in future. So I just want to remember those days, the good and the not so good. The vast majority of them were good though. Um, and I just would invite any of you that grew up in a school setting like that, living in a dorm, to share your memories about that, because I'm sure I'll be talking more in the days ahead about that. It would be kind of good to compare and contrast some of the things and whatnot. Um, and my Patreon will be coming up next week. Well, I mean, it's going to be a YouTube live, but my Patreon members will have a chance to request songs as I play the piano. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think we will just get on with it here. I know that some people find AI scary or just frustrating, that especially when things don't work the way that it should, or that people claim, or when you get hallucinations and stuff like that. And we just have to keep in mind that it's still the early days of AI, and it can be kind of easy for hype to develop and people to predict things that they can't really deliver upon or promise things, especially these engineers. I mean, I fell for that whole Rabbit R1 craze for a while because they made it sound so good in theory, like all this stuff that it was going to be capable of. And it didn't turn out to be nearly what they claimed. And that's the problem with making these videos, and like they were doing, making all these demos and stuff, and you can claim anything in a demo, but then in reality, yeah, it just wasn't nearly it what they said it would be. And so that's why they're not going to last very long, if they're even still around at all. Because eventually you have to deliver on what you say, but there's just enough to see that even though it might not be happening yet, it will be happening. All these things that are being predicted. And so we can't really use what's currently happening as our be all end all. I mean, we have to really look ahead. Um, and like it took away my job, which was kind of a downer, of course, for me because I did transcription, and now AI can do that way better. Um, and but I just have to look beyond myself and look at what is it going to mean for society as a whole, and there will be definitely a time of adjustment, which is why governments and all of us need to start thinking about it now so we have some plans ready when the time does come that a lot of people, I mean, it's just going to change the nature of work and labor and money and just everything. So we need to be trying to prepare ourselves as much as possible and working together. Um, and because we really, I don't think we want to stand in the way of progress. That's just never been possible. And usually there are people, no matter what era it is, that will say this will never work, like cars are not a good idea at all, or even before that, books are not a good idea, like giving people, everybody, the ability to read and educate, like women, is not a good idea. Giving women the right to vote isn't a good idea. Just anything you can name. Getting slaves off the plantation isn't a good idea. It will totally mean reshaping and revamping the in total economic structure. But yet, it after a while, progress is just inevitable, and that's a good thing. So we just have to look at history, um, and realize that whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. And in the long run, I think it's there are going to be far more benefits than drawbacks, but it will be a time of adjustment as we get used to all the changes. Um, but of course, now we wouldn't want to be without our cars and the ability to get where we want when we want, and especially now blind people have got Uber and stuff. We can pretty much just like if we almost like if we had our own car. Of course, it's more expensive using Uber and stuff, but there again, robo taxis are going to even drive down the cost to where anyone of any economic status will be able to call one of these taxis for hardly any cost. And so it will be a win-win, of course, but of course, like taxi drivers and all that will be out of a job, but um, the good outweighs the bad. Um, if you can kind of figure out the pattern I'm trying to get at here, just giving various examples. Um, and of course, there's always like doomers that say AI is going to kill us all if we're not prepared, and we just need to stop it or at least pause it. And in theory, I mean, I've watched some of those videos and I can see where I mean, they have some valid points. But I just don't think I think we kind of reached the point of no return. We cannot pause, um, because there's no way to ensure that everybody in the world is going to pause the building this technology. And so um, it would just be disaster if we were not all trying to work together on it, or not necessarily like with each other, but just at the same time. And um, so I think that's safer in the long run, is to have it as open source as possible. And because even if people in other countries or whatever were claiming that they pause it, how would we know for sure? And even people here, I mean, I'm sure there'd be a lot of stuff going on under the hood, even if there were laws or mandates or whatever saying that we were going to put it on pause. You couldn't really guarantee that. And so it's better to just have it as transparent, out in the open as possible. Um, and so once we kind of resign ourselves to the fact that it is going to happen, then we'd have to like learn more about what exactly is going to happen, at least as far as we can predict now. And because those who don't like want to learn about it or just kind of want to stick their head in the sand or whatever, they're going to be at a severe disadvantage, um, and will be left behind. And so, um, in the end, I think it will be helpful to everyone and will raise the floor. I mean, it will make rich people richer, at least in the short term, but it will also make people of every economic status better off. Like just an example, I was heard today that the uh, robotaxi thing. Like I said before, if people couldn't afford a car, they were very limited in where they could work. Like I would either have to work somewhere close to home that was within walking distance or biking distance, or they would have to spend a lot of money on Uber or take a bus, which takes hours out of their day. And so they will be advantaged just by being able to have more choices in where they can work, and they'll have a lot more time free for other things. And so that's just one example of how life can be better. And another area is education. I mean, now they're starting to take it to these third world countries, and where everybody will be able to very inexpensively get a college education if they like Khan Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with that, KHAN, but I used that for my own kids when I was homeschooling them, and back when it was just getting started, and it's way better now. It keeps improving every day. But basically, it's just where anyone can learn anything for free at any grade level, including college. Any subject at a professional, like it's very well done, and they're bringing this to people everywhere so that anyone who has an iPad, which I mean, there's agencies that are providing these kids with iPads, so that's really all you need now to get an education, and just the implications of that are staggering when you think about it. Um, and Now we're at the point where AI will be able to learn um, itself recursively and make discoveries and research and all that, which is just crazy to think about. Which means it will be easier to diagnose and cure diseases and just make all kinds of scientific discoveries. I mean, at first, obviously, it will be with the help of people, but um, I mean, it's just it will be able to help us find ways to make the environment cleaner and more sustainable. And it's amazing how quickly we'll get used to this new technology. I mean, just on an individual level, I know myself how at first I was wondering, why do we need computers? What will they really do for us? And of course, once I started using them, it didn't take long at all for it to become an essential part of my life that I just take for granted. Um, and same thing with the smartphone. I was a late adopter of that. But once I finally gave in, because there were just getting to be more and more things that I was hearing about that were possible on smartphone and all these apps and stuff. So, and now, of course, I couldn't do without it. We all just have these computers that we can, mini computers we can just carry around in our pocket that have all this power at our disposal. And the same thing is going to be true for the future tech as well. And I just hope it will happen gradually enough that we'll be able to adapt without too much, like seamlessly, I guess is the word I'm trying to say, that it'll just happen so gradually that we'll be able to find uses for it, and before more is released that we don't really know how to deal with. Like if Laura Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie was suddenly dropped into our society, today, she would just be completely confounded and lost because she wouldn't know. I mean, it just seemed totally magic to her, some of the stuff that we have, and she probably would be like not happy because it would just be so different from the world she grew up in. So that's what I mean, though. You kind of have to be, it kind of has to be gradual, because if things just change drastically overnight, it can be a lot harder to adjust. And sometimes we just don't feel equipped or prepared because we haven't had enough time to think about it or plan or wrap our head around what it could mean for the future. Um, and I'm sure there will be some unintended consequences, and things we didn't anticipate, but that's kind of true with everything. There have always been um, a good side and a bad side, even beyond what was predicted. So um, I think it will be kind of cool, though, that some of the things that like people aren't doing much of now, like cooking is kind of a skill that's fallen by the wayside, or hand sewing, and those like might just be hobbies that people take up again for the fun of it, or like learn from older people some of these forgotten skills like canning, or even just gardening, or stuff that people don't have time for today in a more relaxed society. Like if we have robots doing some of our work for us, it will just um, make things kind of go back in a way to simpler times in a way, but yet going way ahead too. Um, but this next era, like we've been through the industrial revolution, whatnot, but the what's coming is going to be even way different than that was, and way more change than even that, even though that was pretty monumental. Um, and the reason is that now um, AI, these LLMs are generating things. Before, AI was all about perception, like understanding language, or seeing images and stuff like that. But now, instead of just detection, these things, the LLMs can generate based upon what the data that is already in there, and research things very quickly. Um, and just do things that it would be impossible for one human to do. Um, like in the medical arena, for example, it will be able to, um, in a fraction of the time that it would take a doctor to sift through like books and records and stuff, the AI will be able to just take all that into consideration, compile it, summarize it, um, and recall everything, and like have like be able to remember, and then reason and extrapolate from that eventually. And because of this, like people are going to start being like living a lot longer, just because diseases will be so much easier to detect way ahead of time and to diagnose depending on individuals. And everything will just be able to be way more tailored to the patient, and preventative care, like I said, will be more of a thing instead of reacting once something bad has already happened. A lot of things we'll be able to keep from happening in the first place, and that's a whole nother video. Like when once people are living a lot longer, how do we adapt to those changes too? And because we want like quality of life and healthier lives, not just living longer. And so another way to think about all this is that before programming, before we had these LLMs, program like coders and stuff had to do things more heuristically, like if this, then do that. Like if this happens, or if this is your input, then this should be your output. So like programmers had to think of all the possibilities and put them in one by one. So it was more like rules based, where the AI, or the whatever you want to call it, was just following the rules basically. but current LLMs don't work this way. Like I said, they're more generative, and so we just have to understand what they are and aren't capable of. Like at this point, they can basically save us a lot of time and give us ideas, but we still need to double check everything, um, and watch for hallucinations, because there's still going to just be some weird stuff every now and then. So we can't really trust them yet. Um, they just haven't advanced to that stage yet, but it's only a matter of time. And the cloud makes it possible for a lot of data to be gathered. Like I was talking medically, um, it would be one, like where all this very current and up to date technology, like they'll be able to know immediately when a breakthrough happens or what testing is being done, and people can collaborate together in just a whole new way. And like Tesla is another example of all this data that's being collected from all of these cars. And that in turn is used to train the cars. Like they're looking at all these, like when drivers do have to intervene, which is becoming less and less, because now with the last FSD self-driving, um, they are able to look at the all this data from all these cars and train and update all these cars just without them having to go to a shop. It's just like over the air updates. And that's just an example of the kind of thing that will filter into all areas of society and industry. Just the ability, like robots, for example, will be, if they're all hooked up to a network that is training, that like as if an error occurs with one of them, it it like, or many of them, the update can fix all of them at one time, or like very quickly go from like be um, what's the word I'm thinking of, like pulled out to all these robots in a very short amount of time compared to how we do things, have always done things. um, and like things, errors can be corrected, and more testing and training can just all be done like overnight, or with these over the air updates and stuff. So it's just pretty amazing to think about all the implications of that, which I can talk about more in future videos. This is still just kind of an overview of what to expect, and so that's why I say what's coming is going to be bigger than any changes we've that in history up to now, um, because none of this, what I've been talking about for the last several minutes, was possible back then. And yet think about how monumental that was. Like the assembly line changed everything, and getting slaves off the plantations changed everything, and automation changed everything. So yeah, that's probably a good stopping place. But I will draw this to a close for now, and be sure to, if you have any feedback or comments or things you want me to address in future videos, questions that you're curious about or whatever, I can do my best, if I don't know it, to try to find the answer. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and um, I will talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.